April 29, 2021. So it is Thursday, so it must be Thursday Live. And I have to tell you, welcome to every single one who's already on YouTube, Facebook Live, wherever you are. And I've been watching my Facebook page. And right up front, let me just say, thanks, Paul Black, for curating or facilitating the discussion on this page. And what I love about Thursday Live, it's supposed to be connection. You know, I want to connect with you. Many of you are connecting with me, encouragement, affirmation. But it's so cool seeing the comment section come alive even before Thursday Live countdown gets to zero and I have the privilege of coming on and talking to you. It's so neat to see the community happening. And like I said, Paul Black's leading the discussion on my page or facilitating it. And we have other team members on the Northridge Facebook page and on YouTube. And I want to say thanks to all of you. But thanks to each and every one of you who actually does community live on this page. And I just want to, I'm just going to whip through my page. Say hey to Karen Gregg. Great to see you, Karen. Long time no see in person, but so glad to see you here so often. Sue Mysick, thank you. Natalie, it's great to see you. Lois, Savannah, Coco, Shemaine, terrific. We also have, let's see, Kimberly Kraus, Jennifer Ampram-Wolf, my very good friend. It's so neat to see people enjoying Thursday as much as I enjoy Thursday. And Kathleen Sykes and Robin Fry, and it's just really neat having all of you connect this way. And I know many of you are a little bit more silent, a little bit more coy when it comes to making comment. That's great. We're glad to have you here. But it's just fun to see community happening because it's really not about getting lost in the technology of it. The technology is a means for us to communicate. It's a means for us to connect. And it's neat to see it happening in so many lives. So again, if you missed it when I first came on, welcome to Thursday Live, April 29, 2021. So glad you connected with me. And if this is your first Thursday Live, couldn't be more excited that you joined us because this is a powerful community and I'm hoping it'll keep growing and engaging and affirming and being useful. Anyone who's known me or my leadership for any amount of time knows I just don't do things to do things. That's not my gig. My gig is if it's not missionally impacting, missionally effective, if it's not achieving the priority purpose, then why? Stop that and do something else. And in fact, as we're coming, through the pandemic towards these latter days of the pandemic, let's hope, let's keep praying that I'm addressing with the team the things that used to be considered normal, ongoing, necessary in ministry that we're just saying, are they impacting? Are they fulfilling the mission? Are they the best thing that we could be doing in these moments to go forward? How did they help us to flourish during the pandemic? How will they help us flourish coming out? And so we're looking at that. But when I see so much community happening here on Thursday Live and see so many people finding it very meaningful, it engages me. It makes me want to, continue and make it better, I hope. Make it more useful to you, but make it maybe more easy for others to connect, to reach people, but to see it go forward. That would be my prayer. But I have just a couple of introductory thoughts, and then I just want to give you my spiritual thought, and then we'll go forward from there. So I just really want you to know this isn't just some professional connection. This is a personal connection as the pastor of Northridge, trying to connect with those who are part of this family and outside the family, because we're not insiders and outsiders, but just people who are trying to get to know Jesus a little bit better, the hope of the world. But personally, I've said for a long, long, long time in my personal life with people I have personal connections with, when we talk about, hey, how you doing? How's life and all that stuff? I've never liked to give a glib or a superficial, inauthentic answer. I like to be honest. At the same times, I don't like to be morose. I don't like to be Eeyore. But I want to be honest, authentic. And what I try and say, if I'm able to say, things are really good right now, is I always like to say, and when things are good, because I know we live in a world where things can turn upside in a moment, where I'm not guaranteed good times. There's a season for everything. In fact, I'm guaranteed trouble as much as anything as a human being. When things are going well, I like to tell people, I want to breathe in and be grateful. Breathe in and be grateful. And because I know I'm not in control of the world. I'm not in control of what does and doesn't happen in my life, my family's life. And so if things are going well or reasonably well, given the context that we're in these days, then I just want to breathe in and be grateful. I want to recognize that God's the one that's in control and the one that's able and the one that's giving me this grace in this moment. And I want to be grateful. Like the Bible says, be thankful in all things, in Jesus. And so I just, today as I think about it, I think about Roxanne and myself, and in spite of this, we want to see so many of the people that we know and love experience more freedom as we, roll to hopefully the last half and last quarter and last couple minutes of this pandemic. We'd like to see the church, everybody in the church want to come back and be engaged in worship and, be growing and waking up to Jesus. And those things are all realities and everything's not great. But I look at Roxanne and she's doing well and we're doing well together, and think about our kids, our oldest daughter, Chris, and her husband, Mike, and our son, Blake, and his wife, Nina, and our daughter, our youngest, Allison, and her husband, Matt, and that they have these relationships that are growing and flourishing, not always easy, but, really trying to love each other. And then they all have kids. Mike and Krissa, 4 grandkids, and I go through Jacobian and Grayson and Nola and Auden. And then I think of Blake and Nina and their kids, Bradley. And then I got to show on a Thursday Live recently, Benjamin, just born recently, and, doing well, and how they're doing with the kids is great. And then little Cohen, who's Matt and Allie's son, and they live in Portland. We don't get to see them near as much. Mike and Chris have moved out of Michigan, and we don't get to see them as much, though we did get to see them this week, which we appreciate. And it's just, they're doing well. And so I'm breathing and I'm being grateful. And I just want to remind you, if your circumstances are such and you breathe in and things are pretty good around you, man, be grateful. And if things are rough, don't forget, God's still real. God's still in control. God's still working good. He can bring about good through all things. And you should, in all things, be thankful, be grateful. And I want to, in all the circumstances and seasons of my life, remember God, because he's in this world of uncertainty. He's the one thing I can be certain of. And if he's certain, then what's it matter, everything else? And I'm actually thinking about doing a talk or maybe a Thursday Live on that idea. But I'm very grateful. I'm grateful that Northridge continues to go forward and make an impact in people's lives, in spite of the fact that Michigan's not necessarily flourishing post-pandemic like other states, and I get a little bit jealous, God forgive me. There are churches in some of the southern states and other states in the West that, when Easter was there, it was like explosive in-person growth, doing all that stuff. And, Michigan, if you're in another state, you might not know this, but Michigan's just, we've got a real psychological block to it, and we're still experiencing some COVID around, and so it's still a little bit harder. But I'm grateful that Northridge continues to go forward, for those that we get to impact, for the lives that are being changed and coming to faith. And this On God series we've been in has been really profoundly needed in my life, and I think in a lot of people's lives, and people have responded. And I always like to hear, what people think about that. But as I've been praying how we finish out, this coming weekend's the last weekend of On God, and I wanted to, finish out a run that takes us up to Memorial Day weekend. And I didn't have the last 3 weekends that I'm on in May figured out. And this week, in fact, it was yesterday, it finally solidified in my heart and mind where we should be going. By the way, our creative team who plans the service was, where are we going next? And finally, I was able to share with them. But it's going to be a follow-on series to On God. And in fact, because it's a follow-on series, I'm trying to connect them a little bit. We're going from On God to 3 talks on growth. And the idea, and I'll say this as I introduce the series, not this weekend, but the next weekend, that, we've gotten to know a lot more about God and who he says he is and who he can be for us. And we've gotten to understand more and hopefully align our thinking with the God that is, what he's communicated that he is. But that doesn't mean we know him better. And so this series on growth is going to be about discussing some primary ways that we can grow in our relationship with this God that we now understand more about through this past series. And so I'm really, really excited about it and tell you more about it as we go forward. So I'm breathing in and I'm being grateful. I'm breathing in and I'm being grateful. And part of this Thursday Live is helping you to break away from whatever it is that's causing gravity in your life and stress and anxiety. And I'm hoping that, like my Apple Watch, can you see my Apple Watch there? Every once in a while, it comes up with an app that says "breathe." That's kind of what this Thursday Live thing is about. I want to take you away from all that stuff and remind you: breathe in, remember God, and be grateful. All right, with that, I want to give you a spiritual thought. And hopefully it's something that can carry you on into the weekend and make an impact in your life. And by the way, I love it. Savannah Murphy on my Facebook page said, "Love this On God, and continuing is so important." That's really cool. My good friend Paul Black even said, On God has been a great series. I appreciate that. And it's just neat seeing so many people connected. But this week's Thursday Live, I just want to share with you something I'm kind of burdened about, and maybe, and it's not negative. This isn't a negative presentation, all the things we're doing wrong, but this is something I'm really concerned about for us who want to follow Jesus well in this world, and kind of a recognition of what's going on in our world and how easy it is to get caught up in that, and how we have to protect ourselves from that. And then, just some positive thoughts to finish it off with. But the truth is, I don't think I'm being unique here, but I'm kind of worried about our world these days. But I'm not. It's not the way you're getting it on social media more often than not, or in daily conversations, worried about the world. Many are worried about the world because of the politics, and certainly that's a concern. And many are worried about the world because of morals or values, and that's a very important issue, and whatever haunts you as an individual. But I'm worried about the world, especially for those of us who are called to conform to the image of Jesus, because it's really easy to get swept away and caught up in community standards, in making sure that we measure up to what those around us feel is right or wrong, and that they know where we stand, and that they, approve of us, and that we're approved in the community. And I often see this on social media. It's like people shouting out whatever it is their particular community is so on fire about, and they shout it out so that they might win the approval of that community or not be, dismissed by that community. And I'm telling you, this world needs us, those of us who are called to conform to Jesus, who truly by faith know Jesus as our Savior and our Lord. The world needs us to be light in darkness. And we have to be so careful about getting swept up in what everybody else is celebrating and what everybody else is approving and disapproving, that we miss Jesus in the thing, and that we start moving away from conforming to Jesus. And it's so easy to get thrown off. And I'll share this as we go through this. It's easy for me to get thrown off. And here's what's going on, it seems like, in our world. And you'll know this. I'm not telling you anything new. If you're on social media of any kind, or you're alive and breathing, you know this. People get caught up. Multitudes of people around us are caught up, and some of us, in their own bubbles of belief. They hang out in their own bubble of thinking, whether it's political thinking or values thinking or relational thinking or religious thinking, and community standard thinking, or whatever it is. And they get caught up in their bubble. They're mostly around those people. Their social media is mostly with those people. Their news sources are mostly from those people. Their readings mostly from those people. Their entertainment's mostly from those people, right? And and what happens is that they're in the bubble, and they keep hearing the same kind of things from all these different people, and it becomes an echo chamber. And then they see in their community that anytime someone doesn't match what's in the echo chamber, what's being said, what's approved and disapproved, anytime someone goes counter to it or questions it, they get, just taken down. You know what I mean? Whether you accept the idea of cancel culture or not, and people are being canceled out, but people are being dismissed and canceled and thrown away and attacked and maligned if they say anything that doesn't fit what's approved in their bubble or disapproved in their bubble. And this isn't just one side or the other. It's all sides, it seems like. And it's so easy to get caught up in it. And everybody's trying to outshout the people who agree with them in order to make sure that they have the approval of those who agree with them. They don't want to be shut out from that group. That's their group. That's their bubble. That's their peeps. And they don't want to be canceled by them. So they have to shout loud to make their community proud. It's like everybody's playing to make those in their world proud of them, happy with them, and just not mad at them. And here's the problem with it. I think you can take that as far as you want to. I think I've clarified it. Maybe you can tell me if you have or not. Yeah, there's grave danger in seeking to win the approval of men rather than of God. John Parker already knows where I'm going. It's like the problem with getting caught up in making sure we have the approval of those that we cherish in our bubble, that think like we think, and where we want to be accepted, and not the disapproval that we're accepted and not rejected. The problem is it leads so many of us, and I mean us, me too, to compromise and surrender who we are and what we really believe. Because if we say what we really believe, this community we're in could cancel us, could disapprove of us. And so we hold back, and we kind of make sure they think at least that we agree totally with them. And it's just really sad. And I have to tell you, I can do this. It's true in many areas, but let's just use the pandemic thing. I pastor a very large church. It's not like I pastor a church where we have 100, and by the way, nothing wrong with a church of 100. I pastored that church years and years ago, but it's not like I pastor a church of 100 where all 100 absolutely agree with each other politically, and absolutely agree with each other in tradition, and absolutely agree with that, and I can stand on the platform, and as long as I'm saying what they think I should be saying, they're all happy with me and all that. That's not the kind of church I pastor, and nor would I tell them anything. I wouldn't tell them anything they wanted to hear. I'm just not made of that stuff. But I'm in a church where we have people from every spectrum you can imagine in their bubble, thinking they're right and their people are right, and then all these different communities and all these different spectrums at Northridge. It's crazy, and we're all coming together to the same place to learn about Jesus. But during the pandemic thing, I did The only reason we shut down our services for a time is because we had no idea what this pandemic was going to do and where it was going to go. And so I'm the shepherd of the sheep, and I had to protect them. And until we could really figure that out and understand that, it's important. Plus, we live in a culture where people were from all different angles on that and going crazy over it. And I had to be careful about misrepresenting Jesus to that culture. I had to make sure I was communicating Jesus to that culture. And then, we started opening up when we realized, okay, we can do this safely in a good way, and gathering is an essential issue. It's important. And so we started doing that. But all along the way, and you know where we are today, all along the way, I had people on one side of that issue who were all ticked off that I wasn't shutting it down more and saying more about what they thought was right and seeking their, saying what they would approve and not saying what they would disapprove and doing everything they wanted, being on their agenda. And many of them wrote their letters and left the church and did all their thing during the pandemic. Then there are the people on the right or the other side of the equation, however you want to label it. And many of them were just so ticked that I closed this thing down at all. And, how can you love Jesus and wear a mask? And, even though the Bible doesn't say you can't wear a mask, except spiritually. And, they're over here politically, and, many of them were just ticked at me and got off there. And you just need to know that I am influenced by that. I mean, I don't want these people to hate me over here and leave the church, and I don't want these people over here to hate me and leave the church. But the truth is, I can't be judging my words and choosing my words and be motivated in order to keep either of these groups happy, because the minute I keep one group happy, the other group's gone, right? And the truth is, I have to do what I think is right before Jesus and God. If 50% over here leave and 50% over here leave, if the church dwindles down to nothing, that can't be my pressure. My pressure has to be, am I honoring Jesus? Am I seeking his wisdom? Are we doing the best we can at following him? It's his church. It's not a place for me to win the approval of either side or all sides. And they're the wrong audience. God's the right audience. And this is a biblical concept that I want to share, and I think John Parker really got to that earlier in his comment on my Facebook page. But listen to these verses. Galatians chapter, and remember, this isn't just about me. I'm using me as an example. I'm saying I have the same weakness as a human being. And I just really want to encourage you, because you're in your bubble and you're going to be tempted to be swept up in what your community is, and you have to be careful about compromising yourself in order to get the approval of the wrong audience. Galatians chapter 1, verse 10, Paul the Apostle says, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I just trying to please people? And then he says, if I were still trying to please people, I wouldn't be a servant of Christ. Dead on right. If Paul was going to serve Christ, he couldn't tell people what people wanted to hear about Jesus or any other issue. He had to tell people about Jesus and what he was really like and make decisions on that. And he had people rejecting him from every side. But if he had been playing for the approval of the crowd, we would have never had the books of the Bible he wrote. We would have never had the churches that passed down the truth to us. And so he was playing to the right audience, God, not these people. Again, in 1 Thessalonians 2:4, Paul says, on the contrary, we speak as those approved by God. We're looking for God's approval. We're seeking God's approval. All we care about and all we're going to live for is God's approval. Not people going, well, I'm going to leave if you don't do this. I'm going to leave if you don't do this. Say what I want you to say, or I won't approve you. I'm going to cancel you and all that. None of that. He says, on the contrary, we speak as those approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, with the truth. God's entrusted us with the truth. And we have to be seeking his approval, or we will start compromising the truth for this group or for that group. He says, we're not trying to please people, but God, who tests our hearts. And I want to challenge you that you should be doing that. Not trying to please people, but God. Not trying to please your social media community. Not trying to please your culture group. Not trying to please your thing. Trying to please God, who tests our hearts. And then just so you know, I'll throw in, along with Paul's words, Jesus, Matthew 22:16. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, and they were coming to challenge Jesus. And they said, Teacher, and they were trying to flatter him. But in their flattery, they really got to a truth about him. Teacher, they said, we know that you are a man of integrity, that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. And they were kind of mocking him a little bit, and then they were trying to ask him about who should we pay taxes to Caesar or not? Where do you stand on that? And they were really trying to play with his head. But they really got a truth. They knew this is a guy who didn't care what people thought of him, and he only cared about communicating the truth about God. And he's the one we're supposed to be conforming to. And why I'm worried about this world is because the only light this world will ever see is from those of us who conform to the image of Jesus. But if all of us who are called to conform to the image of Jesus are more interested in not being canceled by the people in our community, the people we want approval from, not being ostracized or rejected from that group, making sure that we say what will win their approval, we won't be conforming to Jesus. We'll be conforming to them. And that's what's going on in Christianity today with so many people. They're conforming to the culture around them, so the culture around them will approve of them. The political culture, or the vocational culture, or the educational culture, or the economic culture. And whenever we seek the approval of human beings, we're no longer seeking the approval of God. And this is such an important issue. And I want to caution you about it. We absolutely have to make sure that we're not playing to the wrong audience. We have to make absolute sure that we're seeking the approval of God and not the approval of human beings. And because the minute we're seeking humans' approval, we're going to be walking away from God. It's kind of like when Adam took the fruit from Eve, seeking Eve's approval, walked away from God. And so I just want to challenge you, please don't get in the echo chambers. Please don't get in the bubbles. Please don't let yourself be pulled in by that. We should only pursue God's approval in life. And I want our church to grow. I want everybody who's ever come to our church to be in our church and to be growing in Jesus, loving Jesus. I want us to be expanding. But the minute I play to the approval of the people at Northridge so that they'll stay, that's the minute I'm susceptible to compromise what I say about God's truth. And I just really want you to know it's true in your life as well. And so let's not get blown by the winds of seeking men's approval or fearing men's rejection. And let's just decide, if I have God's approval, that's all I need. And if I have God's approval, He's going to do in my life and through my life and in the church I lead or in whatever your calling is, He's going to do what He wants to do. So pursue one thing alone. Pursue God's approval. I used to say it this way, seek the audience of men. Don't seek the audience of men, seek the audience of God. Don't seek the applause of human beings, seek the applause of God. What reminded me of this was I was reading an Utmost for His Highest devotional on April 24th, just a couple days ago, and Oswald said, never court anything other than the approval of God. And it's like, poof. It's like, that's it. I'm reminded. And so here's the question I want to ask you as we wind Thursday Live down. Whose approval are you living for? Whose applause are you living for? When you write a social media post, are you more interested in what God thinks of it, or in how many clicks and approvals and likes and loves and comments you'll get from your community? And this influences all of us. And if we're going to stand strong for Jesus, then we have to make sure He's the audience we care about. Otherwise, we're going to stand strong for something else. In fact, don't forget, it's who you care most about giving you applause and approval that will determine what you do, where you go, the choices you make, and what you ultimately become. And I don't know about you, but I want to become like Jesus. And so I need to seek his approval more than anyone else's. And I need to want his applause. I need to be desperate for his applause more than anyone else's. And I have to evaluate every weekend that I teach and every leadership decision I make by this, because it's easy for me to make a decision that goes, man, people will like this. And it's what a horrible reason to make a decision. Or the staff will like this, or my wife will like this, or whatever. I don't know. I hope that helps. It just, man, we have to make sure we want his approval and his applause more than anything else. Okay? Super. I'm going to look over here to some comments. You see me looking away. I'm just looking at comments. And I love what's going on. Got a bunch of thank yous, so trues. Thank you very, very much for that. Kimberly said, "You are seriously a gift, Pastor Brad. Do not change. Your church believes in you. Stop questions about that." And that's sweet. Thank you. I love the affirmation. I really do. And God has given me more affirmation than I deserve. But you just need to know there's pressure. We as human beings have pressure. And I never want you to think it's easy for me to live for Jesus, hard for you. It's not. It's not easy for me. It's hard for all of us. But if we let go, the only hard thing is letting go to him, making him our primary focus and concern. And when we do that, then he makes our life everything it's supposed to be. All right. Well, I want to pray with you guys, and I'm so thankful and grateful that you showed up. Thursday Live it means so much to me. And I want to tell you, God continues to work around here. In fact, just before I pray with you, I want you to know prayer is such a vital thing. And I love to celebrate when God's doing things in prayer. And you might not know, but I can't pray for everybody by name and personally. But when I know of someone from our ministry who's experiencing some things and really need prayer, I try and pray for them. And I've been praying for my good friends at Northridge, Leonard and Edwina, for a long time now. And they've been challenged with some health things. Leonard's gone through surgery now as of yesterday a couple of times in the last couple of months. And they said he went through the surgery well and he's doing okay. And they're going to wait on the prognosis and what the doctors found in there. But I just want you to know it's so important that we pray for each other and that we celebrate that. And want you to know that I just pray for those of you who are part of Northridge and who are here, that you would know Jesus, because it's in knowing him that you're going to know everything you really long for in life. So let me pray with you, and then we'll say goodbye. Father, thanks for each one who's here on Thursday Live. I just ask that you'd touch their life in a special way. Thank you for bringing Leonard through his surgery and being with Leonard and Edwina, this faithful volunteers, faithful part of Northridge, such a beautiful part of our family. I just pray that you'd bless them and encourage them and help them keep experiencing your presence and help them to know they're really loved by their church family. And I pray that while I mention their names, everybody here who's part of the Northridge family would know that they're loved, that they're cared for, that they're supported. And I just pray that you'd help each and every one of us to know you more fully through our experiences, whether good or bad. And God, please help us to be committed to wanting your approval and your applause more than anything else in this world, so that we'll live for you. And I'll thank you for it. Be with our church. Help us to keep waking the world up to Jesus. We'll thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, everybody. Hope to see you this weekend as we finish out the series on God, just before we start moving towards that next short series called On Growth. And hope you'll invite people. Be inviting people. We need to keep waking others up to Jesus too. But thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of my life and this church family. And if you're a guest, again, welcome. Grateful that you've come. If we don't see you this coming weekend, hope to see you next Thursday on Thursday Live. Good night, everybody.